but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure it's not good because, he knows Guzan's out. He knows he's the starter, right? He ain't coming out unless he really has to,
Yeah.
right? He's going to be gutting it the whole way, right?
Yeah, and then it's just it certainly looked like more individuals were also off on their game, like Gutman, who's pretty reliable. Fair to say he didn't have his
Yeah,
best
Gutman had a
performance.
terrible game. The
Which
other thing we noticed right off the kickoff, I mean, you and I both turned to each other and we said, is Almada, his head already in Napoli?
yeah,
I mean, the rumors out there are that he's going to Napoli, right? And it looked from the very beginning like that. He was kind of a little showtimey, he wasn't quite moving as much as he usually is. It wasn't really far off, but
yeah, there was something that was off in terms of his energy.
Yeah.
He didn't look like he was out to prove something like he normally is. And again, another example of a player who has been nothing but amazing the last handful of games. Now, he instead of being an 8, his performance was like a 4.
Yeah.
And then, so Etienne didn't stand out, but again, maybe that was because of the space being occupied by Gutman. Araujo was pretty damn quiet. Miles was decent, right? Sosa was decent.
Robinson and Sosa were, thank God, good because that's the heart of our team.
Yeah.
And they, that's what kept us in, the game the whole time. Yeah. I thought the subs, we could talk about the subs, right? So Wiley came on for Etienne, and Barry came on for Papa Giorgio, right? And I thought everybody say, "Oh, I'm so worried about Yakimakis, his hamstring or whatever." If I was looking at the clock, he didn't really have any knock or whatever. He didn't I didn't see him holding it or whatever. He kind of looked up at the clock and just sat down. I think that was a premeditated sub from the very beginning.
He definitely did a second thought about whether he was going to sit.
Okay.
I saw him do that. I was like, oh, is he going to sit down? And then he didn't. But I saw the body language, like he was going to take a seat, and then he didn't, and then he chose to. So you might be right. But hopefully it wasn't him also being like, do I want to try to play through this little?
Yeah, could be.
Do I want to play
could
through
be a
this
little bit of both.
Tweaky feeling I'm feeling, or should I be responsible and sit down? That's how I read it in real time, is that he was feeling like, hey, I don't want to do the full tear. I'm gonna go talk to the guy after I ice this and try to not make this like a 8-12 week type of hammy pull.
Yeah, but and then obviously Almada came off just minutes later, so it all looked like it was all like coordinated. Now I would say
Almada's was certainly a rest move, right? Because he's coming off a knock.
I presume it's all because they have slight injuries and they wanted to get him off
Wednesday.
The other thing would be Wednesday, but if that's true, I can't see imaginably anybody resting our players for Memphis on Wednesday night. I mean, no offense to Memphis.
Didn't we lose to them in the preseason?
No.
Or I thought we did.
No, we played Chattanooga in the preseason.
That's and we lost to them.
It was like tied with the starters, like 2-2 in the first half. Yeah. Chattanooga's a way better team than Memphis.
Okay. It was Chattanooga. All right.
But anyway, so yeah, I can't see resting that. So if that's the reason, but the other thing I'll say is that, we saw again what I think is poor player evaluation, because Papa Giorgio comes off, whether it's because of the injury or whether it was premeditated, it doesn't matter, right? And he brings on Barry when obviously the choice should be Machop Chol. Now you would say, oh, he brought on Machop Chol just a few minutes later, but it doesn't make any sense. Machop Chol, I think, to be honest, when he played out wide as a winger, he looked to me. The only time I've ever seen him play really well for Atlanta United was in the preseason where he played as the sole striker.
Yeah.
And so to me, that looks like his natural position. I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
So he's physical, he's strong, he takes players on, he can lay on a good ball, he can score. All these things look really good. So
he's got to be really hard to defend.
Yeah,
too. Like
he's physical.
He's got
he's a nightmare.
Weird physique. He seems like a nightmare.
Yeah, a nightmare to defend. But this is what I'm getting at, right? Because he brought on Barry for forward, and then he brought on Cho behind him in the attacking midfield for Almada. So if you look at those two players' strengths, right, you would have said the thing about
You mean
Barry.
the one player's strength?
Well, Barry doesn't have many strengths, but if you look at his weakness, it's pace.
Yeah.
Right. So why in the world would you put your less pacey player up front to try to run by people and your more pacey player in the midfield where there's nowhere to run? Why?
I don't know. I want to get back to this.
Because they're both tall, they're both physical. One's fast, one's not. Right. So if you're looking at those two players and you knew you were going to make those moves, right? Even if you say forget how bad Barry is and he never should be on the field, but if you were going to do that, Chol plays up top and Barry plays in behind him to hold up the ball and maybe play Chol through.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, what would be Miguel Barry's potential strength? And you're saying he is a big physical guy,
yeah,
but he never got back to hold. He never had movement.
He never moves. So if you don't move,
it just be a big cone in the middle. If it's just going to come to you.
There was a guy who used to play in the middle who never moved, who was really, really good. Carlos Valderrama.
Yeah.
At the end of his career, he never moved more than 10 yards anyway, but he could hold up a ball. He was super physical and he could find the next guy. So I don't know whether I'm not comparing Barry to Valderrama.
I played against.
I know you have.
That's a good story from the Charleston tournament.
Yeah, and maybe you should tell. But what I was going to say is that if you look at those players, you can get away hiding non-pacey players in the middle. I mean, Manchester United is a perfect example. They bought Weghorst, and Weghorst turned out to be slow too. But Ten Hag, who I think Weghorst should never be on the field either. He's like Manchester United's Barry. But at least he had the decency to realize he's never going to run by anybody, and he doesn't finish with his head. So that's the other thing. If you have a guy who really goes to the ball and he doesn't, and Barry doesn't either. So he dropped him in the hole and play behind where he could hold up the ball and try to play it through. And where also he's really kind of disruptive with his long legs as the first line of defense in the attacking part of the field. And I'm not saying we should do that, but that's the only possible role I see for Barry.
I see the only role for him is to be cut.
Yeah, well, I agree too.
I'd
cut him tomorrow.
I don't want to be harsh. I would cut him tomorrow. He's wasted space in the team. I mean, I've seen enough. And I don't know what. I mean,
I agree.
Great opportunity against a bad Chicago team, and
nothing.
You can't give me any sort of memory. Yet again, it's like the third or fourth time. Yeah, it's getting fiery around here.
He's heating up.
But that's pretty easy to get pissed off about that. Even average Joe can figure out that Miguel Barry is not having an impact on this team.
He's not having anything on this team.
I mean, Paul Mullen, right? Is in was in the National League, which is for those listeners who aren't familiar with European football, that's 5 divisions down from the Premier League. Come on, he would light it up at Atlanta United, wouldn't he?
Paul Mullen, yeah.
Paul Mullen.
He would be great in the MLS. I'm surprised that somebody hasn't made a run at him.
Yeah.
Because he's a terrific player.
Why would Paul Mullen leave? Dude, he's like
I know,
he is in the best situation.
And he's close. I guess he's from there, from Wales.
I think he's got some connections with that area where that was definitely a life change. That we should cut him tomorrow, Miguel Barry.
I have only one other thing to say. There were 2 moments in the game where we were defending like a set piece and Giacomakis was back. And interesting enough, on those plays, we won the ball and immediately Lennon and Gutman went flying up. And Giacomakis realized that the ball was potentially going to turn over, and he covered in for Lennon and Gutman, which is A, remarkable, but B, in the second one of those 2 examples, which is in the 55th minute, I don't know whether it made the highlight package because I forgot to check, but in the 55th minute, if you've recorded the game, you can go back and look. So Giacomakis stays back for Gutman. He goes forward. We do turn over the ball. They start to play in. Gutman's like, oh, crap, and starts running back, gets back. So to release, Giacomakis again, and he runs right into the middle to stand next to Parata. And he left 3 players wide open behind him. We used to talk about this with a certain Atlanta United left back who's no longer with us, who's in Europe. Remember?
that's in Europe?
Yes, he moved to Europe. He was on the national team. He featured in a World Cup qualifier.
Oh, Bello.
Yes.
Yeah. I
George
forgot.
Bello
Yeah.
used to run all the way back, and he would leave guys open and run right by them.
Yeah.
Right. And I've never seen Gutman do that. And he was having such a bad day that he did that. And thank God we blocked the cross, because there were 3 guys standing behind him wide open.
Yeah. So what else do you want to talk about in this game? Because I think we've talked a lot about the game, which only had a few interesting moments. We obviously got the header in the last minute of the game. Finally got one of those going our way.
Yeah. So at the end of the game, the supporter, I mean, we had nothing. We never crossed midfield basically the whole second half. It was awful. But we gave up the goal. We'd only had at that point, Wiley was like the only offensive player was still on the field. Right. I mean, we don't include Barry. and so we were like, and all the players were like, oh crap, I guess we have to go forward. Like, because they were parking the bus and trying to get us into the next, into the next game.